So I don't think I can dream of a more packed room. And it just reminds me that each year it seems to be more and more popular. And it's not even the Masters of Digital, it's our summer summit. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming here. I know that we also have over 1,000 people online. So a big hello to everybody who is online. Summer summit. It sounds like it's just before the summer holiday, but I don't think it is, unfortunately. We have to wait a bit for that. But it doesn't mean that we are, there are so many exciting things going on. We have a new commission who has put simplification, meaning cutting the burden of cost for companies in Europe at the heart, and putting digital in the middle of that, but also are putting security and resilience of Europe at the heart of this commission's target. And, putting digital at the heart of that too. I have a very special guest that I'm proud to introduce. EVP Henna Virkkunen has been a very good collaboration partner also as an MEP, and I think she carries a knowledge that we can all learn from. Finland knows exactly how to be digital resilient and how to be resilient as a nation. Before I welcome EVP Virkkunen on stage, I am also very happy to welcome another guest, the new CEO from Nokia, Justin Howard, who's been in Intel before, also responsible for data centers and AI work. And I think I can say that Nokia is bringing one of the most important technologies that we have made in Europe. 5G, 6G connectivity is actually one of the technologies where we lead. And it's definitely one of the companies and technologies where we of course also have Ericsson and others. We are actually the leading, and other parts of the world are highly dependent on our ability to create this amazing technology. Now there is a next quantum AI game in this one too. And I'm also happy to see that Nokia is definitely on the forefront of that. So with that teaser for the EVP's speech later, let me welcome on stage the new CEO of Nokia, Justin Howard. Please, the word is yours.
Thank you, Cecilia, and it's very nice to be here with all of you today. It's been about 2 months since I became the CEO of Nokia, and one of the privileges in my start has been the chance to meet with so many different stakeholders, customers, investors, and of course employees. And one of the groups that I met with and talked a little bit about AI and quantum and future technologies with recently was a group of early career employees at Nokia, recent university graduates. And what was interesting in their perspective was their excitement and almost their frustration at the opportunity that was in front of us and how we could move faster with AI, leverage these technologies more quickly. And if you think about it from their perspective, in their mindset, AI is what they're growing up with. For them, they don't think of Googling like some of us might think of. They think of using ChatGPT or potentially Perplexity or Claude or one of these other platforms. And it was exciting for me as the CEO to see that that agile mindset, that mindset about what is next in technology and how can we use technology to unlock new potential. And ultimately, that's what technology is about, unlocking human potential. And as someone that started my career when the internet supercycle was getting started in the late 90s, it also reminds me of a saying that while history doesn't repeat itself, it often rhymes. And if I think about being here in Europe, we need to make sure that actually when we go from the internet supercycle to the AI supercycle, history does not repeat itself in Europe. And that's because when you think about the world today, 7 of 10 of the world's most valuable companies are actually technology companies. None of them are in Europe. And in fact, Nokia used to be one of those companies. In its peak in 1999, it was one of the most valuable winners. In in the mobile telecom era, Europe had global winners. And the reality is today, we still have great companies in Europe, and we have great companies in technology in particular. ASML is the undisputed global leader in semiconductor machinery. Simply put, the AI revolution, what we are seeing in technology, autonomous vehicles, would not be happening without ASML. SAP, we're one of the many companies that runs their business, relies on SAP, a global leader in enterprise software, and really a disruptive leader in terms of enabling productivity, cloud, and early on AI applications as well. And as Cecilia talked about, we have two companies in Europe, Ericsson and Nokia, that are the only two companies in the Western world that deliver mobile connectivity at scale. It's really incredible. In fact, the champions are here in Europe. And so the question that's on my mind is, how can we go from some of these targeted critical areas of technology leadership to creating a much bigger generation of winners in Europe during the AI supercycle? It's very obvious to me, Europe has the talent, it has the natural resources, it has the innovation mindset, and the capital to be able to do this. But I think we have to ask ourselves as we look at this cycle, how can we make sure that we make the right choices today so that when we look back 20 or 30 years from now, we're not in the same position that we were in the internet cycle? And as the CEO of a technology company in Europe, and albeit obviously an American, I've actually had the opportunity to be a part of innovation in Europe. I helped lead the Lumi supercomputer, deploy that in Finland. I worked on a number of other AI supercomputing projects. I was in Italy a few weeks ago and saw E&I's new HPC6 supercomputer. I know that the opportunity is here. And I believe if we work together and collaborate, we can actually seize these tremendous opportunities in AI, in the emerging future for quantum, and take advantage and be leaders in this technology supercycle. And it's not just what we're seeing today in the early stages of AI, data center investments, large language models, obviously Gen AI. It's the things coming just around the corner. It's augmented and virtual reality, robotics, agentic AI. These are platforms that create tremendous opportunity. In fact, if you think about it, you may have noticed Google announced new XR glasses incorporating their AI Gemini assistant. And they're one. But Meta has also made innovations, two US companies. But Meta's collaboration was interesting to me. You know what they partnered with? They partnered with Luxottica and Ray-Ban, a European company, to build a very cool, probably the coolest piece of tech in a long time, around an AR augmented set of glasses. And they're doing so running on 5G networks provided by companies like Nokia and Ericsson. And what I'm confident in as I see these innovations is we are at the front end of a technology supercycle. These are all indications that are at the beginning of the supercycle, much like what we saw with internet browsers in the early days, for those of you like me that remember that time. I see a few faces that probably don't, but nonetheless. And I think there's a great opportunity for Europe to have the opportunity to be real leaders in this space, particularly when I think about the geopolitical context that exists today. But to do so, there's a few things we have to do to take immediate action. First, the first thing is European companies need access to a scale market at home. This is the massive advantage that when you think about the US or China, they have. And they play it in different ways, but both have access to home markets that deliver scale. And let me start with a reference in telco, because telco is a market where today we don't have a scale advantage. Thank you. Whoop, that's not going to work. The scale market today, if you look at the US, the average number of subscribers a US telco operator has is 100 million. That's about 29% of the population per operator. In India, comparable operators have about 260 million subscribers. Now, both are very large markets, of course, single markets. But that's 18%. In Europe, do you know what the average number of subscribers per operator is? It's about 4 million. That's less than 1% of the population per operator. And of course, I recognize there are sovereignty considerations. This is relevant, but 1% is not access to a scale market. And if we just simply allow European telecom operators to consolidate in many countries from 4 to 3, like you've seen in the US, like you've seen in India, if we allow that to happen, what we will see is greater scale. We'll unlock true investment and innovation in 5G and 6G, and it's not just 5G and 6G. We'll see accelerated investments in broadband to home. We'll see new innovations in services and technologies. And that's why this is so important, because when you think about the internet era was largely described by devices. We started off with the fixed internet, we went to mobile internet, but the AI era is fundamentally about advanced connectivity. And it's not just about performance. AI fundamentally means we have to rethink how we design networks, the services we deliver, how we handle those data demands, and how we do so in a secure and reliable manner. Because if you think about augmented reality for a minute, if you picture what that might look like, there's no way that I can have interruptions in connectivity. And I was on the train yesterday from Paris, and I was on a phone call, and I was on the phone call, and the phone call dropped, and it wasn't because the Eurostar was going 280 kilometers an hour. It was because I entered Belgium. It's a great example. And this is the kind of thing where a scale mindset matters. And if in AI, we can't afford to have those brief interruptions. And so when I think of connectivity, I think of advanced connectivity as the on switch for artificial intelligence. And again, we have two great companies here that provide connectivity solutions, two global champions, certainly champions of the Western world. We have to enable them with a scale market. And if you think about it, I touched on the US, I touched on China. India has the same thing, a growing economy and a great technology base. And as I said before, I was privileged to be a part of the supercomputing investments in the EU, and I'm confident that when we look back in a decade or 2 decades, we'll see we'll see technological innovation from these. But on the other side, I think it's not just about enabling investment. We have to allow a regulatory environment that permits scale and permits scale in commercial deployments. So when we talk about AI gigafactories, I'm excited about the progress and the opportunity that presents for European companies, but we need to give European players the access to scale markets so they can actually justify the investment in large-scale AI technologies that will be needed to be able to use those gigafactories. Otherwise, we'll be subsidizing gigafactories for other scale players, American companies or other established players to continue to participate. So my ask is, let's make sure we learn from the internet era and we make sure history does not repeat itself. Second, scale is important, but we also need a true digital single market. And I touched on that example going from France to Belgium. The reason that happens is we don't have a unified spectrum process. And in fact, if you look at what happened with 5G spectrum allocation, we need to make sure we don't repeat that with 6G spectrum allocation. Nokia is a global leader in 5G standalone, which is a fully independent 5G network. So 5G standalone means I've stood up a pure network in 5G. And it's more than just the data bandwidth you get on your device. It's the services that I can enable. It's services that allow defense capability, allows public safety. It's services that allow private enterprises to access it. We're seeing adoption and use cases for hospitals, for mobile medical care, many other innovations. And 5G standalone is important because it's the stepping stone to 5G advanced. It's where we'll see these applications like augmented reality, like autonomous vehicles start to get adopted at scale. And it will ultimately lead to 6G. And if you look at China, and if you've been to China recently, you'll note that they have a ton of autonomous vehicles. They're leading in robotics. They're investing in networks. 80% of their mobile users have access to a 5G standalone network. India is second, 50% availability. The US, not doing so great. 25% of its network has access to 5G standalone. Europe, 2%. So it's decisions that are made, or I would actually say decisions that have not been made from over a decade ago that are now playing out in the technology that our companies, our consumers have access to. And that impacts our innovation, our agility, and I believe fundamentally impacts European competitiveness far beyond the technology industry. You know, we were late in Europe on 5G deployment. And as I said, fragmented spectrum allocation was one of the key factors. We need to allow harmonized spectrum allocation across EU member states. This is something that Enrico Letta and Mario Draghi's reports both called for. This is something we need to adhere to. And then finally, my last point is Europe needs trusted technology and technology from trusted partners. What's different in tech from many other industries is winners are created in technology cycles. When there's a transition in cycle, you have new winners. That's the opportunity. It's very different. If you think about manufacturing consumer products, brands sustain multiple portfolios, right? They multiple generations. We can all think of some of those brands. But in technology, it's different. You go through a technology transition, new winners are created, former winners become sidelined in many cases. And it's not a coincidence that when you think about China's rise over the last 3 decades, it's happened on the back of the internet supercycle, because technology has been a huge part of their story, from the supply chain and manufacturing to the R&D, to the innovation, and to the investment. They've leveraged this supercycle. They've invested in the internet, drones, semiconductors. These are all things that they benefited from this cycle. And if you think also about technology, the other key thing about technology is, you know, both if I think about supercomputing, but I go all the way back to the beginning of the internet or many other innovations in semiconductors, they're all born out of the defense needs in defense technology that spurned a ton of commercial applications downstream. You know, the reality is times of adversity often are the times that spur tremendous, incredible innovation. And I reflect on what's happening in Europe right now, and particularly on our eastern border with Russia's illegal invasion of the Ukraine. It's a human tragedy, but it's also a catalyst for investment and innovation in defense infrastructure and innovation in defense adjacent technologies. One of the key elements of that, for example, is connectivity. And the difference, and you've seen the reports, the recent reports about some of the advantages that the Ukrainian defense forces are having. One of the key things is getting access to real-time actionable intelligence on the battlefield. That's because they've got high-performance, trusted, and resilient connectivity. And despite what you might hear from certain industry players, it's not all satellite technology. Nokia's technology is actually helping strengthen Europe and NATO's defense. It's incredibly important in our home country, Finland's eastern border, where we share 1,200 kilometers with Russia. It's important that we have trusted connectivity in that environment. And defense is a market for us that's important not only because it's the integration of public and private networks, but it's a source of ongoing innovation for the market. Because trust is the fundamental factor. If you have technology you can trust, then you can rely on it across all of your core functions and systems. And the reality is connectivity today is essential to governments, to utilities, to transports, to every business, to every consumer. We cannot probably imagine our lives without digital connectivity. And we're using today 5G, fiber, IP, optical networks, and it's conveying personal information, critical, sensitive information, in some cases, mission-critical information. But today, Europe's mobile networks, 4G and 5G mobile networks, still contain 37% untrusted equipment. In some European countries, that goes as high as 60%, including in Finland. It's alarming. Western security agencies have repeatedly warned that hostile actors are targeting our intellectual property and threatening our industrial future. 5 years after EU advised its members to strip out untrusted technology, why is Europe still allowing high-risk infrastructure in European telecommunication networks? European governments need to lead here, protect their industries and their citizens by replacing untrusted technology with trusted solutions. The EU's 5G security tech toolbox should be extended to all telecom technologies, fiber, IP, optical, and made compulsory in all member states. As I said, Europe has unique technology assets that will play a pivotal role in the AI supercycle. Europe has tremendous potential. I believe in it. That's why I came here. And we have the opportunity to create a new generation of winners in the AI supercycle. And I believe that in Europe, because of some of the values that we have here, not only will those winners create great commercial value, they'll help unlock human potential and they'll advance humanity's progress. And I really look forward to working with all of you to make sure that future happens. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, listen, you spoke a bit about, first of all, thank you for coming here. I didn't know about the 2%. I didn't know that number. That's quite alarming, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can talk about potential there, big potential.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yes, a lot of opportunity. Listen, a few questions. You spoke a bit about security and the toolbox and how this needs to be mandatory to make sure that we can actually trust our, basic infrastructure. Europe is now talking about European defense. What role does connectivity and technology play? Do you see that playing a major role in how we make our new defense work in the EU?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at the innovation that's being talked about, a lot of these new innovative technologies, drones, augmented reality. Obviously, first of all, I'd say no one wants to be in war, right? But we also know from history that strong and capable defenses prevent wars. We lived in that. It's the Europe I grew up in the 80s, right? We had that protection. The reality is there's a new forefront of innovation, and that involves remote drones, augmented and virtual reality, and real-time connectivity as a part of the tactical battlefield. Those investments are only possible with connectivity. And it's not going to be the connectivity that's been there in the past. It's going to have to be commercially leading connectivity. Yeah. We've seen this play out. The nuclear arms race was largely won because of supercomputing. We've seen this play out in semiconductor. That's what computing drove. And I would say that in the AI era, it's going to be connectivity that's a huge differentiator. And we have a tremendous opportunity to invest thoughtfully. But it's also important that it's easy to say, well, that's just in the battlefield. But remember, and I think maybe it's just now moving to Finland that has sort of caused me to realize this, the battlefield for us is on the border. And also, it's not just a traditional battlefield. It's easy to think about some of the histories of having a border, but the border is now a digital border. And if you look at what happened with Salt Typhoon in the US, for example, the ability to disrupt, disintermediate, and attack an economy by actually disrupting its network is massive, let alone the access that it provides to data, the ability to get data and provide insight, and whether it's on a critical technology or critical information to use that competitively. And we've seen this story play out in so many examples over the last decade and a half. I think it's time to acknowledge it and move to a more secure infrastructure.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for taking the time to come here. Please give a hand.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Justin. Please.